Hello, Roundtable family, and welcome to our new program every week, Tuesdays on the Edge, our version of Overreaction Monday, but of course better. I'm your host, Rowdy, joined as always by my co-host, Big Boy, and we are missing Coop. He's traveling back to school today. He will be joining us on Friday for, of course, the Sports Roundtable Trio edition. But it is going to be a packed episode, and he is joining us right now. Let's see once his camera gets on.
What's going on?
All
How you
right, what
doing?
up, Josh?
How's it going?
Good,
Going
good. How you
good,
doing?
man.
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Well, like I was saying, joining us now is Josh Clark, writer for 105.3 The Fan, home of the Cowboys, of course, up in Dallas, Texas. Big Boy's favorite team.
Here we go.
Sweet.
And it's none other than a big week, of course, right? Regular season just wrapped up, playoffs on the way, wild card weekend, packed wild card weekend, home game for the Cowboys, clinching that 2 seed, winning the division, of course. But we'll get right into it with over to Josh, kind of just what your thoughts were on the Cowboys regular season as a whole.
Yeah, they coming in the season, they were probably pegged to be the second seed in the division behind Philadelphia. Probably neck and neck with them. Coming off the Eagles' strong season last year, and everyone probably picked Dallas to make the playoffs, and rightfully so. They still had a good core of their group coming back, and they added Stephon Gilmore, a former All-Pro corner, and they added Brandon Cooks, who's had several thousand-yard seasons, but couldn't really find a home to stay, a place to stay for several years. Kind of just bounced around, but was always very productive. It took a little bit for them to get him going, for him to find his way in the offense a little bit, but he's had some, I think, 7 touchdowns this year. He's been a nice number 2 option for them, and I think everyone expected them to still make the playoffs, but to finish second, and they were doing a great job all season long, and then all of a sudden the Eagles start faltering at the end there, and out of nowhere Dallas all of a sudden becomes the number 2 seed and wins the division the last game of the season. They had a winner beat the Commanders, and they're division champs, and they got the job done. And so they have a nice path to potentially make their first NFC Championship game for the first time since the 1995-96 season. So there's definitely a lot of excitement around here right now.
No doubt. Speaking of Gilly Lock, is he going to play? Have we heard anything? Do we think he's going to be good to go?
Yeah, so he separated, had a dislocated shoulder last week against Washington, and Jerry Jones was on 105 to the Fan this morning on Sean and RJ. He comes on our show, on our station, twice a week, and so he was with the guys this morning, and he said that they're hopeful that he can play. He's going to be limited in practice all week. That goes for Tyler Smith as well, the left guard who's in his second year with the team. So both he and Tyler Smith they're expecting them both to play. Jerry was very optimistic about their availabilities this week, and the Cowboys are going to need them. Frankly, they lost Trayvon Diggs, the opposite starting corner, earlier this season. And so Gilmore's been there, and Deron Bland has stepped up and led the NFL in interceptions this year. Had all those pick sixes, early on in the season, and he got another one in the last game of the season against Washington this last week. So Stephon Gilmore is vital to the season. They don't have very much depth behind him and Bland after they lost Diggs, so very important to have him, and it looks like they will. And then as for Tyler Smith as well, he's a key part to the line. TJ Bass stepped in his place and did a fine job, but it obviously would help to have Tyler Smith there as well, next to Tyron Smith, who's an All-Pro himself at left tackle. So Dallas should be, they have no excuses to win this week and to advance in the playoffs, and I'm sure we might talk about that here in a little bit. They're very healthy. Other than losing Diggs and having Gilmore and Smith, they should be able to play. So they're very healthy coming into this game.
No doubt. Well, obviously, You just mentioned it. Obviously, the playoff matchup this weekend, first wild card game at home with the Packers coming in healthy, right? What's kind of your thoughts on how the Cowboys match up with the Packers at home in Jerry's world?
Well, so Dallas is undefeated at home, which is they have a huge advantage. It was vital to them to get home field advantage. No one thought that was going to happen. No, I said my goodbyes to my coworkers in the press box at the stadium a couple weeks ago after the Lions game because I didn't think I'd see those guys until preseason next year, in person. Yeah, we said our goodbyes, and all of a sudden the Cowboys are going to have not one but potentially two home games. So look, Green Bay is the youngest team in the NFL. Jordan Love is in his first year as a starting quarterback. This is his fourth season, I think, in Green Bay, but he wasn't starting. He wasn't playing. Aaron Rodgers was there. So, yeah, they're getting a rookie quarterback and the youngest roster in the NFL to come in here and this weekend and play. Let's be honest. I mean, I don't know if anybody ever even thought that Green Bay was going to be in this position this year, right? Making the playoffs and they weren't very good. Earlier this season, they started rattling off some wins. Aaron Jones was not good this year. He was not himself. He had some injuries, was banged up. And all of a sudden he had 3 100-yard games to end the season, 100-yard plus games. So Dallas is 7.5-point favorites coming into this game. I would expect Dallas probably expects to win this game handily. And I would expect that too. So I would say that sounds about right. At least a touchdown win for the Cowboys. And I would be surprised if we got anything less, to be honest with you.
Awesome. I like to hear that because I know the Packers have ripped my heart out with Aaron Rodgers before. They have definitely been a heel in the side of the Cowboys a couple times in the playoffs. What's your biggest keys to the game? Is it Dak and CD to get going, or do you think we're going to see a lot of the run game this week? What do you think the best thing for us would be?
Yeah, I mean, in Dallas, unfortunately, the run game has not been there for them this year.
Yeah.
Pollard, he just barely made it over 1,000 yards last week, and he was not. Unfortunately, I think the injury that he had in the NFC champ or in the divisional round last year against San Francisco really, really hurt him. He was not the same back that we saw. He did not have the same burst that we saw previously. I think him and Zeke were a great tandem. Zeke brought the power and the thunder lightning kind of game and the combo, and unfortunately Tony just didn't have that this year. And I think by about the middle of the season they sorted some things out with their line. I think the blocking wasn't really there either. I think it was a combination of things. So I expect the same. The Dallas offense has been really focused on Dak and CD, who had a monster, unbelievable season. He set records for both receptions and yards at the franchise records this year. Broke Michael Irvin, who held both those records in the same game. CD's been unbelievable, and I expect Dak to feast on the Green Bay secondary with CD and Jake Ferguson, who's been Dalton Schultz left in the offseason, went to Houston, and Jake Ferguson has just taken on that role, an option for Dak to find. And he's connected with him. So I expect the same. I expect a dose of CD and Fergie with Cooks mixed in there a little bit. And, hopefully Pollard, he's shown a little bit of burst, midway through the season, shown a little bit more. So hopefully they can get that ground game going. And Rico Dowdle's come in and done change the pace and been that option for them too behind Tony. So, but yeah, I would expect mostly the same. Finding CD and finding Jake, and then with Pollard and Cook sprinkled in there with combination of Jalen Tolbert and etc. I mean, Gallup unfortunately hasn't done anything this year. He's been totally ghost town from Michael Gallup this year. He's done good in the blocking game. He's been helpful there, but yeah, I would expect those other weapons to get the job done this weekend for sure.
No doubt. Well, I know you kind of mentioned, of course, we got Josh Clark from 105.3 The Fan joining us, and you mentioned how Jerry Jones always comes on y'all's show to speak with all y'all over there a couple times a week. What were his vibes and kind of thoughts going into this wild card weekend?
I mean, Jerry is, his excited self. He was in a jovial mood this morning. They can see it, man. I mean, they have no excuses. I really don't believe they have any excuses to not make the NFC Championship game, like I said a little bit ago. I think Jerry sees it. He sees it right in front of him. It's hard not to be excited about it. I mean, let's be honest, you were not expecting to get the 2 seed. You were not expecting to have 2 home games potentially, and maybe San Francisco stumbles. I don't see that happening. I don't see San Francisco losing. I think you're destined to face them for the 3rd straight year in the playoffs. Dallas has been eliminated by this same organization 2 years in a row in the postseason. They've lost 3 straight against them. They lost earlier this season. They got embarrassed in San Francisco or earlier this year. Santa Clara, if you will, is where their home games are. But yeah, I mean, if you're Jerry, it's hard not to be in a great mood because you have 2 home games. You should beat Green Bay. You should have no problems beating them. And then you have most likely the Rams, who you crushed earlier this season. I know the Rams are a different team this year, or at this point in the season than they were earlier this year. They've gotten a lot better as the season has gone on. And then you have Detroit. You could have Detroit or LA, most likely, barring any other upsets happening on the other side of the bracket. But yeah, I mean, they've beaten both teams, Detroit and Los Angeles. So they should have no problem beating Green Bay. They should have no problem beating one of those other 2 teams that they come in here the next week. So yeah, Jerry's in a great mood because he can see that his team seems destined. They're on a collision course to face San Francisco again, but that's obviously a daunting task. So, you focus on one game at a time. You play Green Bay first, then you see who you get next round, and then you go from there. But yeah, if I'm Jerry, I'm very excited how things have played out with Philadelphia just falling apart like they did.
For sure.
No doubt. Well, I know you kind of just talked about those other NFC teams that are in the playoffs and kind of the Cowboys' potential route. What do you think for the Cowboys as a team themselves and how they kind of match up with these other teams? What would be like the ideal kind of NFC playoff route leading up to probably more than likely San Fran in that NFC Championship game?
Yeah, I would probably say the Rams over the Lions. They would be more concerned about the Rams over the Lions. I'm sorry, I meant that the other way around. They'd probably be more concerned about the Lions and the Rams. The Rams they're tough. They're a physical team. And obviously the Rams they've gotten it together, even though they've traded all their 1st-round draft picks and they've spent a lot of money and stuff. They're up against it. Sean McVay's a great coach, obviously, not to take anything away from them, but I know they've improved, like I mentioned a little bit ago, but I mean, they put 40 points on the Rams earlier this year, high 30s. I can't remember what the score of that game was, but they whooped them pretty good. I wouldn't be concerned about the Rams coming in here, no matter how much they've improved. Stafford's a veteran quarterback. I get that. And he's a better quarterback than Jared Goff, but I think collectively as a whole, the Lions have more talent around that team. Hutchinson's fantastic defensive end. He wrecks shop. He makes things difficult. So yeah, I would say the Lions are much more difficult team that the Dallas would prefer to go against the Rams than they would the Lions, for sure. And that game was close, right? A couple weeks ago, the game was close. It came down to a crazy play at the end of the game. The 2-point conversion, that whole fiasco. And, it came down to that. It was a 1-point game. And who knows what would have happened. Dallas had 1 timeout. They had 23 seconds. Detroit probably does a squib kick, and Dallas maybe gets the ball with 20 seconds, and they have the best kicker arguably in the NFL this year, who was perfect up until the Washington game where he had a block kick and a missed kick. But Aubrey had a leg, and who knows what happens. Who knows if Dallas is able to get a last-second field goal and win that game still. But so yeah, I would prefer the Rams over the Lions in that scenario.
For sure. What are your, real quick before we move on, kind of looking at the division rival and the Eagles, what are your thoughts on kind of that 1st-round matchup they got at Tampa Bay? Do you think they're going to be able to squeak out of there?
Man, Tampa, I mean, the NFC South, that whole division is not good. It's mediocre. I mean, let's be honest. The Saints, Bucks, and Falcons. Tampa Bay, for whatever reason, they have not been good at home this year. I don't know what's going on with that. But Philadelphia, they're just in a bad way right now. I mean, getting smoked by the Giants is just, and they almost lost the Giants 2 weeks prior,
Yeah.
on Christmas Day. Um, yeah, I mean, and then they just getting cooked. I mean, the Cardinals, they're a different team with Kyler. I know they were bad earlier in the season, but they beat Dallas with Josh Dobbs. I mean, just things happen. It's the NFL. Things can happen any given Sunday, right? Teams can show up and win, and the Cardinals were obviously motivated. They saw blood in the water. They saw a team who's just been knocked down, and yeah, I don't know. It would not surprise me at all if Tampa Bay won. Just because Philadelphia, I think Jalen's probably dealing with some injuries. He's probably dealing with a little something, and let's face it, they've just been bad. So it would not surprise me one bit if Tampa Bay beat Philly. So I don't know what the line is on that game. I don't know if you guys seen the line. I have no idea.
I think it's 4. I think, or no, it's Philly -3. It's Philly -3. I saw
Philly
it
minus
today.
3. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably take the Bucks to cover, just because they're at home. But just off the top of my head, but yeah.
I like it. I like it. Well, of course, like we mentioned, Josh Clark, writer over at 105.3 The Fan, home of the Dallas Cowboys, but that is also not the only team in Dallas you could say that y'all always cover and talk about. And another one that's prime season, having a good year right now, is the Dallas Mavericks, of course. Obviously, your very own Texas Rangers earlier this year finally won the World Series. I'm sure that brought some happiness to you being a lifelong Dallas fan. But kind of looking at the Mavs, what are your thoughts on their season so far and their potential getting
First
to
place.
this halfway point almost?
Yeah, no, the Mavs I think they're right around the 6th seed right now. They're 4 games out from Minnesota for the top seed in the conference. Look, they had their best win of the season. They beat Minnesota the other night. They've won 3 in a row. They beat Portland back-to-back games. Portland's not any good, let's be honest. But they beat Minnesota, which was a great win the other night for them. Look, it comes down to, for Dallas, they still they're short on size. Derek Lively has been a very pleasant surprise for them this season. I don't think anybody expected him to be as productive as he's been for them so far, blocking shots and really, frankly, he didn't really seem to have much of an offensive game coming out of Duke. They didn't really ask him to do that coming out of Duke. He wasn't really utilized in that way, and he's really connected with Luka. Their 2-man game has just been, it's been a joy to watch so far. Kyrie's the key. Luka's going to get his every night. A healthy Kyrie is key. He missed several games with an ankle issue, freak accident. Dwight Powell landed on his foot. So that cost him several games, but he's back. They lost the first game and he came back, but they won 3 in a row since he returned. Dallas still needs to make some moves. They still need some help defensively and on the glass. Luka's been their leading rebounder, one of their leading rebounders. I mean, they need more, right? They need more size. Dwight Powell behind Lively's not going to get it done. Grant Williams is undersized. He's an undersized power forward. He's 6'6", and he's underachieved a little bit. He came out hot, was making some threes out of the gate, but unfortunately he's not been as good as he was to start the season. So I know they're interested in Pascal Siakam. I know they're interested in Jeremy Grant. Those are a couple of names that have been on the block, but I don't think they have enough to get something done for one of those guys. I think they need more. They don't have enough pieces to do something like that. They're looking. They're going to try to shore that up. What the trade deadline's February 8th. So today's January 9th. So just under a month away from the trade deadline. So we'll see what they can cook up. But I think they'll definitely try for sure to try to shore something up, and we'll see if they can make a run. I think if they can get some more size, I think they'll maybe have a shot to maybe do some damage in the playoffs. But until they do that, unfortunately, I think they might be a first round out, maybe a second round out, possibly at this point.
Sure. Well, man, we appreciate you coming to join us for a little bit on our Tuesdays on the Edge, as we like to call our Tuesday segment, a little recap going into this big wild card weekend for the Dallas Cowboys. But we appreciate you and everyone listening. Make sure y'all go tune in to 105.3 The Fan, of course, the home of the Dallas Cowboys. Listen to those guys over there, and of course, go and read all their articles they put out every week. It's some good stuff, man. But we appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate y'all
Thank
having
you.
me.
Yes, sir.
You
We'll
got
see
it.
it.
Anytime.
All right. That was Josh
Finally,
Clark.
we get some Cowboy talk on here. It's not y'all hating on them. That's awesome. I'm proud of that.
Hell yes.
That
Josh
was
Clark,
awesome.
lifelong our family. But he's been over at the 105.3 The Fan for a while now. And man, I always enjoy listening to whenever Jerry comes on their show. He's always got something to say.
Trying to find that glory hole. You know what I mean?
Yep. Well, of course, on Friday's episode, we will get back into more of the NFL and all these wild card matchups that are soon to come this weekend. But kind of looking back at what just happened last night, the last college football game of the year, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean you can't stop talking about it, right? I mean, you already got people putting out their too early top 25 rankings for next year. I mean, all that's a little insane for me, but the media's got to keep their attention somehow, right? But looking back, Big Boy, what were your kind of recap thoughts on that game from last night?
Well, of course, the running game and us texting each other, kicking ourselves because UT, didn't get that opportunity that I think they would have done. But Washington showed a lot. Their defense did after because it looked like it was going to be a blowout. And their defense showed up, and they gave Penix the opportunity to go out there and win the game. And he was getting the pressures, and it just seemed like they were getting to him more. And he wasn't as crisp in the pocket as he was, it seemed like, against Texas. Maybe they're a step faster, and that's why. But when Penix was moving around in the pocket, he seemed more flustered than he was when we saw him last weekend or last week. So Michigan, hey man, they came out, they did what they needed to do, and they looked like the championship team. They were tough, and they were hitting Penix, and they got to him. And those receivers just didn't look like they were on either. I heard Rome say that he ran a wrong route. It was probably on that one that they missed there, and it was at the second quarter when he was just wide open.
I think so. Yeah, I think it was a little right before half almost.
Yeah, that could have been huge if they would have got that. So it was a good game. I enjoyed it. I was, like I said, I was frustrated watching it, but can't go back to 2 weeks ago. So
no, I mean. And I was watching the Pat McAfee show this morning, and they kind of talked about it in that Michigan defense, right? That was they made Penix look the most uncomfortable he's looked all year, right? Kind of making him rush into his decisions because he's been elusive in the pocket all year and was been able to stay calm and collected. But I think Michigan did a very good job of the times they only did rush 4 and they played zone a lot. And they disguised their zone a lot. And I think that was what really threw Penix off the table, just because he really hasn't seen that much disguised zone coverage this year when it comes to that. And I mean, they were just able to confuse him.
And they were rushing 4 most of the game. Like they weren't having to send,
And so like they did it. And when they did get pressure, which they got it quite a bit, which I'm interested to see whenever the PFF stats come out, how many exactly they got. I know they sacked him a couple more times in Texas, but I'll be interested to see what those pressure numbers look like compared to Texas, because with Texas, he was just able to still be elusive in the pocket and stay calm and make a decision and find open man. But with Michigan, when he got pressured, it was like he just lost his mind and didn't know where to go with the ball. And
kind of pressing,
I think obviously it's the Natty, you're losing most of the game. So that plays a role in it. But like I said, I think how Michigan's secondary played, I mean, you could say besides the running game in Michigan, which everyone knew that was going to be good, you could say the secondary is the MVP of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and Corum. That running game, I mean, they ran for over 300 yards rushing. So it was that's how that's what I thought how you could beat Washington was just run the ball and keep him off the field. And again, Washington's defense, they stepped it up after those long runs there in the beginning, man. They kind of, they gave him the chance. So
They did. They did. And I mean, everyone thought right after that first quarter and a half, like, damn, this may be like last year, right?
Yeah.
And then second and third quarter, like, oh, Washington's D's figuring things out. I think Michigan's OC just tried to get a little bit too cute with not just kind of sticking to the run and those basic pass plays that they like to run, and tried to get a little too cute with McCarthy a little bit and just kind of stalled their drive some. And obviously the fourth quarter happened, and Penix and Washington still couldn't get it going. And it was a lot of that was definitely not the Joe Moore offensive line that of the year right there in Washington. I mean, all the pre-snap penalties. I mean, they looked like Texas whenever Texas played Washington, with all those penalties, holding calls, pre-snap penalties. And then even in the pocket, right? I mean, how much pressure? I mean, they were getting blown over by 4 dudes and just missing dudes. Like, dudes were free rushers to the quarterback. They weren't even getting touched. So I think that was a big piece. And I think you saw that in the second half. Like, I can't remember Washington's head coach's name. Dober, I think is how you say his last name. But you can see it in his play call, and like ton of screens, ton of quick passes, right? Besides a couple of those deep passes he connected in the fourth quarter, those were the only ones like 20 plus yards down the field that they connected on.
Well, and one thing to me, Michigan was doing, man, when they were coming up and tackling, they were tackling. I mean, they were stopping them. Their defensive backs, I mean, they were really doing very well. Even they'd catch a little 5-yard out, they were on them and tackling them. You know, that was great tackling. There was that play when Washington was going in. I think it was in the first quarter, and 77 pulled, and that cornerback got low, and then he jacked up the running back. That was a great play, man, using his outside shoulder. I mean, that was a solid play to go through a block of a 320-pound tackle, which I think he was All-American, and then make that tackle. It was very impressive the way they were coming up and tackling, man. They definitely had it.
No, it was, and we'll throw a little teaser out there. We will be having someone from the Michigan side that covers Michigan wholeheartedly on this Friday's episode at 9 a.m. The Sports Roundtable Trio Edition. Not going to say anything more than that. Just make sure you tune in for a real Michigan breakdown on their season and the year that they had going 15-0. Because obviously we can talk about it a little bit, but those guys over there who cover the team themselves, I mean, they know way more than we do. So look forward to that coming up later this week. But looking back in the NFL landscape, obviously with now being the playoffs, there are all the bottom tier teams, right? NFL draft order getting set. Some dudes maybe trying to figure out who they want to draft. But then, of course, we got the head coaching chaos around the NFL that seems to happen every year, with whether coaches who deserve it or owners who have just been. I like that.
I got to switch over to the NFL logo. Even they can't see it because my fat head. It's back there. Trust me.
But you always got those owners and ownership who decide to move on from whether it's the head coach and the GM or just the head coach, right? And started earlier this season, obviously with McDaniels and at the Raiders. We're going to figure out if they're going to keep Antonio Pierce, right? That's a big domino to fall, because Raiders could be one of those big destinations for some of these coaches that are getting fired or may could be leaving soon, right? When it comes to Harbaugh, or if Belichick decides to leave, or Vrabel now just got fired today, right, in Tennessee. I mean, I think he'll obviously be the first one, or just him and Harbaugh, probably, and Belichick, if he ends up getting let go by the Patriots. Those are probably the top 3 guys that can really get these dominoes falling. But
I think if the Raiders don't go with Pierce, the Chargers' job too. The Chargers are there, I think, with a culture change and some change there. I think they could be back quick. The Raiders, I like the Raiders, man, and I don't know if they'll keep Pierce or not. I hope he gets a real shot, because it seems like, they really played for him. But a lot of times in those situations, they always play for the backup coach, as they say. Yeah. I do think the Chargers is probably the best job out there. You got the Falcons. They got some young talent. And like we talked about the other day, Bieniemy would be a nice coach over there. I think that would be good. He has some young weapons. It's the quarterback is still an issue. They're going to have to get a quarterback that they trust. Maybe keep Desmond to kind of go into next season while you have that other quarterback maybe learning a little. But I don't know, man. It's Atlanta's they have a lot of talent there.
Yeah, I mean,
offensive.
And I think that's the reason why they need to go that offensive direction for a head coach, right? And kind of because you already got the offense there, and then hire a DC and let him just go run things over there and kind of figure some things out on that defensive side. But I mean, you hit it with Eric, obviously,
or him to the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, if that turns out to be, I think obviously everyone's just waiting for Belichick before anything's going to happen, right? Before any of these hires, before any of these dominoes, as we like to call it, start falling around. But I mean, the Falcons, you mentioned quarterback. I mean, they number 8 pick, I think they said that they locked in, and probably 4 quarterbacks that are going to go in the top 10, and Penix, Caleb Williams, Drake Maine, and Jalen Daniels.
Daniels, yeah.
So those 4 dudes should probably go in the top 10. Maybe people get a little bit scared of Penix and he falls a little bit outside the top 10, but he's not falling outside.
I still like
20.
him, man. I think, one bad game isn't – well, and it wasn't a bad game. I don't know. He looked different. He definitely did.
He did, but, I mean, it didn't help, right? They had their half-injured running back who –
yeah.
I mean, really props to him for pushing through, playing, and I mean, he just couldn't do anything, really. I mean, he wasn't helping them out. I mean, they didn't have a run game, right? They put in the backup running back, and he dropped that wide open first down pass on the third down right there on the outside. So, but I still see him kind of going. But obviously, you got the Chargers with the opening. You got, of course, Carolina and that dumpster of a fire. Feel bad for whatever coach decides to take that spot.
Carolina is a job that, I mean, as a young coach, you got to take it if you can get it. Yeah. But man, that's just that owner does not care. He will fire you next year. He does not play around. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm not sold on Bryce Young either. So
well, and that's a situation too, right? No first round pick this year. A lot of not much salary cap. Like, it's not like you can go in and really do a full turnabout. They just tried doing that, and it didn't turn out very well for the last GM, the last 3 years. So that's a place where if you're a head coach, you just kind of go and try and get that guaranteed bag and just pray that you hit the gold mine on the draft in the mid rounds or the free agency. But Falcons are a good one, right? And then the Commanders too, right? Ron Rivera gone. Be interesting what the new coaching staff that comes in there. Obviously with Sam Howell. I mean, had a pretty
maybe
good year,
they consider
right?
Bieniemy too. Who knows?
They're not too bad of a team talent wise either. So there's a lot of dominoes fall, right? It's like we talked about the transfer portal. It's really just going to be who's first, and I'm sure there's going to be a couple more openings that we could see that come up too. I mean, if the Cowboys stumble this weekend, shoot, who knows? Maybe McCarthy's gone.
Yeah, you know how I feel about that, but I don't know. I think they would have to definitely lose this weekend. I think Jerry really likes him, so I doubt he's going anywhere. Now the Titans with Vrabel, that's one of those things. Like, you think he could, if Bill does leave, would they consider hiring him up there in New England, or if you did send him, or Vrabel is a Raider? I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, I just think with Vrabel being Patriots Ring of Honor, and I mean that's his hometown up there, right? That's where he was for a long time. I don't see, and even if I don't see him not getting one of these other head coaching jobs. But say they do keep Bill. Can you imagine if he goes just to be the DC up there with Bill? I mean,
well, Bill's GM and all that magic he used to pull. His GM and hasn't been too good lately. So
no,
maybe it's just time for that to be done if it's gonna be done.
No doubt. Well, before we get out of here, got a couple minutes left on this Tuesdays on the Edge adventure. Kind of looking at it, I know it's kind of a little surprised, but if you had to pick one of these teams, I was obviously Carolina is a big one, but another one that's kind of you would say is on the edge going into this end of the regular season, going into next year. Who do you think one of these teams could be? Let's go.
I think the Titans are. I definitely think the Titans are. I mean, Henry's gone. You know, you have a quarterback that you're not 100% sure about really, and Will Levis. You know, you're losing kind of your heart of your team, which was variable to me, and Derrick Henry. So I think it could be bad news. Like you might not should have got rid of him. I don't know. I like Vrabel. I think he was a good coach. I mean, won Coach of the Year 3 years ago, and you know now he's fired. So I do think that I think there's some things there. I know they hired a new GM, and he didn't have anything to do with the new GM being hired, and so it's kind of like if that new GM like my job's on the line and this isn't my guy. So, you know, go get who you want. But you might not like that answer, you know, and so because Tennessee loved him, you know.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, that brings us to the end of Tuesdays on the Edge adventure. We hope that you enjoyed this ride as much as we did. Make sure y'all tune in to Friday's episode, Friday morning, 9 a.m. Central, for our special guest to kind of close out the college football season. And of course, we're going to be previewing all of the wild card weekend games for you.
A lot of NFL talk. We're going to get ready for these playoffs.
A lot of NFL talk. Kobe will be joining us, of course. And then also stay tuned for Friday for some Sports Roundtable Trio Edition updates. We got some good things coming with getting into these new sports seasons, right? Basketball's in swing, baseball will be here before we know it. And you know, we're always planning for what's to come next. So make sure y'all tune in Friday to the Sports Roundtable Trio Edition to join us on that and find out everything that's going on there. But don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a comment if you feel like it. And of course,
ring that bell. And Coop, be careful going back to wherever your West Texas hellhole you're going to, buddy.
West Texas hellhole, he says. But Coop will be back with us Friday, of course. But until then, we'll see you Friday on the Sports Roundtable Trio Edition. Peace.